When Harrison Thornfield refused to shake Michael Jordan's hand at a charity gala, he thought he was showing his power. The billionaire looked at the greatest basketball player in the world and turned away. "We don't associate with entertainers," he said coldly. What Harrison didn't know was that someone very important was watching that night. And 3 days later, that person almost died because of what they saw. What could make someone want to end their life after watching a handshake get refused? And how did Michael Jordan's next move end up costing the Thornfield family everything they had? Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that like button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. The crystal chandeliers sparkled like diamonds above the ballroom floor. Rich people in fancy suits and expensive dresses filled the Palmer House Hotel in Chicago. Tonight was the annual Children's Hope Charity Gala, and everyone who mattered was here. Harrison Thornfield stepped out of his custom black Rolls-Royce. His steel gray hair was perfectly combed. His tuxedo cost more than most people made in a month. Behind him, his wife Victoria smoothed her silk dress. Their 16-year-old twins, Cassandra and Preston, followed quietly. "Remember," Harrison told his children as they walked toward the hotel entrance, "we are Thornfields. We built this city. Everyone here knows that." Preston nodded, trying to stand taller like his father. Cassandra looked around at all the fancy cars and felt something twist in her stomach. She didn't know why these events always made her uncomfortable. Inside the ballroom, waiters carried silver trays of champagne. A jazz band played softly in the corner. Pictures of smiling children covered the walls, kids who would benefit from tonight's fundraiser. The charity supported basketball programs for poor children in Chicago. Harrison shook hands with the mayor. He smiled at bank presidents and real estate moguls. Everyone wanted to talk to the Thornfield family. Their steel company and real estate empire made them one of the richest families in Illinois. "Harrison," called out Margaret Chen, the event organizer. She rushed over with a bright smile. "I'm so glad you could make it. We have someone very special here tonight, who I know you'll want to meet." "Oh." Harrison raised an eyebrow. In his mind, there weren't many people special enough to meet a Thornfield. "Michael Jordan is here as our guest of honor," Margaret said excitedly. "He's been so generous with these basketball programs for underprivileged youth. Come on, I'll introduce you." Victoria's eyes widened slightly. Even she knew who Michael Jordan was. Preston straightened up. He'd watched Jordan play on TV and knew he was the greatest basketball player in the world. Cassandra had heard the name but didn't follow sports. They walked across the crowded ballroom. People moved aside as the Thornfield family passed. Near the stage, a tall black man in an elegant tuxedo was talking to a group of excited children who had been invited to the event. He was laughing at something one of the kids said. His smile was warm and genuine. "Mr. Jordan," Margaret called out, "I'd like you to meet the Thornfield family. They're one of our biggest supporters tonight." Michael Jordan turned around. He was even taller up close, with kind eyes and an easy smile. He had just led the Chicago Bulls to their 4th NBA championship. Every kid in America wanted to be like him. Every adult in Chicago knew his name. "Mr. and Mrs. Thornfield," Jordan said warmly. He stepped forward and extended his right hand toward Harrison. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for supporting these kids. This program means everything to them." Harrison looked down at Jordan's outstretched hand. The ballroom seemed to get quieter around them. People were watching. Victoria held her breath. Then, Harrison did something that shocked everyone in the room. He looked at Jordan's hand, then deliberately turned his head away. He didn't shake it. He didn't even acknowledge it. "We don't associate with entertainers," Harrison said coldly. His voice was loud enough for people nearby to hear. The word entertainers came out like it tasted bad in his mouth. Victoria's face went pale. She started to reach out her own hand, but Harrison grabbed her wrist and pulled it back. Preston looked confused and embarrassed. He had been about to shake Jordan's hand too, but his father's icy stare stopped him. Cassandra watched Jordan's face. She saw his warm smile fade. She saw something flicker in his eyes, not anger, but something deeper. Disappointment. Hurt. Then his expression became calm and controlled. "I understand, sir," Jordan said quietly. His hand dropped to his side. "Have a good evening." The jazz band kept playing, but it felt like the whole room was holding its breath. People whispered to each other. Someone near the back gasped. Margaret Chen looked horrified. Harrison straightened his tie and walked away with his family. Victoria kept her eyes on the floor. Preston's face was red with shame. Cassandra glanced back over her shoulder and saw Jordan talking gently to the children again, pretending nothing had happened. As they moved toward their table, people stared. Some looked angry, others seemed shocked. The Thornfields had just publicly humiliated the most famous athlete in Chicago. Everyone had seen it. Near the bar, a well-dressed man in his 50s had watched the whole thing. His name was James Patterson, and he worked closely with Michael Jordan on business matters. His jaw was tight with anger as he watched the Thornfield family walk away. Jordan appeared beside him a few minutes later. His face was calm, but Patterson could see the hurt in his friend's eyes. "You okay, Mike?" Patterson asked quietly. Jordan nodded slowly. He looked across the room at Harrison Thornfield, who was now sitting at his table, acting like nothing had happened. "I'm fine," Jordan said. His voice was steady, but there was something new in it. Something determined. But they just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Patterson raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Jordan turned away from watching the Thornfields. His expression was thoughtful and serious. "Some people need to learn that actions have consequences," he said quietly. "Maybe it's time the Thornfield family learned what respect really means." The charity gala continued around them. People gave speeches about helping children. They raised money for basketball courts and coaching programs. But everyone was still talking about what they had witnessed. Nobody knew it yet, but Michael Jordan had just declared a quiet war on one of the most powerful families in Chicago, and he was going to win. The next morning, Harrison Thornfield sat in his massive corner office on the 60th floor of the Willis Tower. Through his floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see all of Chicago spread out below him like a map he owned. And in many ways, he did. The office walls were covered with awards and photos showing 3 generations of Thornfield success. His grandfather, William Thornfield, smiled from a black and white picture taken at the opening of their first steel mill. His father, Richard, stood proudly next to the deed for their first skyscraper in. Now Harrison controlled it all. Thornfield Industries employed over 15,000 people across Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. Their steel built the bones of half the buildings in downtown Chicago. Their real estate company owned shopping centers, apartment buildings, and office towers from Michigan Avenue to the suburbs. Harrison picked up the morning newspaper and frowned. There was a small item about the charity gala on page 3. It mentioned that Michael Jordan had raised over $2 million for youth basketball programs. It didn't mention the handshake incident, but Harrison knew people were talking. His secretary, Mrs. Patterson, knocked on the door. She had worked for the Thornfield family for 25 years. "Your wife is online too," she said quietly. "She sounds upset." Harrison sighed and picked up the phone. "What is it, Victoria?" The country club called. Victoria's voice was tight with worry. "3 women have already asked me about last night. They want to know why you were so rude to Michael Jordan." Margaret Chen called too. "She's very disappointed in us." "Let them talk," Harrison said, leaning back in his leather chair. "People have short memories. This will blow over in a week." But even as he said it, Harrison felt a small knot of unease in his stomach. He had built his empire on relationships and reputation. If people started questioning his character, no. He pushed the thought away. The Thornfield name was too powerful. They owned too much, employed too many people, donated too much money to charity. One basketball player couldn't threaten what 3 generations had built. 40 miles away in the wealthy suburb of Lake Forest, the Thornfield mansion sat on 10 acres of perfectly manicured lawns. The house had 47 rooms, including a library, a ballroom, and an indoor swimming pool. Servants cleaned and maintained everything so the family never had to worry about ordinary tasks. Victoria Thornfield stood in her art studio, staring at a painting she had started months ago. It showed children playing in a city park, their faces full of joy and hope. She had been thinking about those children at the charity gala, the ones who would benefit from the basketball programs. She remembered being young, before she married Harrison. She had studied art at Northwestern University and volunteered at soup kitchens. She had believed in helping people who were less fortunate. She had believed in treating everyone with kindness and respect. When had she stopped believing those things? Victoria set down her paintbrush and walked to the window. She could see her children by the tennis court. Preston was practicing his serves, hitting ball after ball with angry intensity. Cassandra sat under a tree reading a book and looking troubled. Both twins attended the exclusive Deerfield Academy, where tuition cost more than most families' yearly income. They had private tutors, personal trainers, and every opportunity money could buy, but Victoria wondered what they were really learning about life. Preston came inside for lunch, his face red from exercise and frustration. "Why did Dad have to be so mean last night?" he asked his mother. "Michael Jordan seems like a nice guy. All the kids at school think he's amazing." Victoria didn't know how to answer. How could she explain that her husband had been raised to believe that some people were beneath them? How could she tell her son that she had been too weak to stand up for what was right? "Your father has his reasons," she said weakly. "What reasons?" Preston demanded. "Jordan is successful, he's famous. He helps kids. What more does Dad want?" Victoria turned away from her son's questioning eyes. She didn't have a good answer. Meanwhile, Cassandra found herself thinking about the look on Michael Jordan's face when her father refused to shake his hand. She had seen hurt there and disappointment, but she had also seen something else, a quiet dignity that impressed her. That evening, the family gathered for dinner in their formal dining room. The table could seat 20 people, but tonight it was just the 4 of them. Harrison sat at the head of the table, cutting his steak with sharp, precise move. "I've been thinking about last night," Victoria said carefully. "Maybe we should make a donation to that basketball program, you know, to show support for the children." Harrison's knife stopped moving. He looked up at his wife with cold eyes. "Absolutely not," he said. "I will not be seen supporting anything connected to that person. His name is Michael Jordan," Cassandra said quietly, "and he's done more good for this city than most people ever will." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Harrison slowly placed his knife and fork on his plate. "What did you say?" he asked in a dangerously quiet voice. Cassandra felt her mother's warning look, but she couldn't stop herself. "I said his name is Michael Jordan, and treating him like that was wrong." Harrison stood up so quickly his chair nearly fell over. "You are 16 years old, young lady. You don't get to tell me what's right and wrong. I have built everything you see around you. I have earned the right to choose who deserves my respect." "But Dad," Preston started. "No!" Harrison slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes jump. "I will not have my own children question my judgment. Michael Jordan is an entertainer. Nothing more. He bounces a ball for a living while real men like me build companies and create jobs. The room fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Victoria stared at her plate. Preston looked confused and angry. Cassandra felt tears in her eyes, but not from fear, from shame. Later that night, Harrison stood alone in his study, looking at photos of his business empire. Steel mills, office buildings, shopping centers, all bearing the Thornfield name. His grandfather had started with nothing and built something lasting. His father had expanded that legacy. Now it was Harrison's job to protect it. He thought about the look in Michael Jordan's eyes when he had walked away from the handshake. There had been something there that made Harrison uncomfortable. Not anger, something cooler and more dangerous than anger. But what could one basketball player do to a family worth over $3 billion? Harrison poured himself a glass of expensive whiskey and pushed the worried thoughts away. The Thornfield Empire had survived the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and countless economic challenges. It would survive one insulted athlete. He had no idea how wrong he was. 6 months passed like a slow-moving storm. At first, everything seemed normal for the Thornfield family. Harrison went to his office every day. Victoria attended her charity meetings. The twins finished their school year with perfect grades. But small things started going wrong. In March, Harrison sat in the Chicago mayor's office, confident about winning a huge steel contract. The city needed new bridges, and Thornfield Industries had submitted the lowest bid. They had built bridges for Chicago for 30 years. This should have been easy. "I'm sorry, Harrison," Mayor Rodriguez said, not meeting his eyes. "We've decided to go with Great Lakes Steel instead." Harrison felt his jaw drop. "But our bid was $2 million lower. How does that make sense?" The mayor shuffled papers on his desk. "The committee felt that Great Lakes better represented the values we want in our city partners." "Values?" Harrison's voice rose. "What does that mean? We've been doing business with this city since before you were born." "I'm sorry. The decision is final." Harrison left City Hall feeling confused and angry. In 30 years of business, he had never lost a contract when he had the lowest bid. Something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what. Meanwhile, Cassandra was making her own discoveries. She had started lying to her parents about where she spent her afternoons. Instead of taking art classes downtown like she told them, she was volunteering at the Garfield Community Center on Chicago's South Side. The neighborhood was nothing like Lake Forest. The buildings were older, some with broken windows. Kids played basketball on cracked courts with bent rims. But Cassandra had never felt more useful in her life. She helped kids with their homework and served meals to families who couldn't afford enough food. The children called her Miss Cassie and hugged her when she arrived each day. For the first time, her money and last name didn't matter. What mattered was showing up and caring. "You're different from most volunteers," said Kane Williams, who ran the youth programs. He was 25, tall and athletic, with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Most rich kids come here once and never come back." Cassandra felt her cheeks get hot. "How do you know I'm rich?" Kane laughed. "Your clothes cost more than my car, but you're not like the others. You actually listen to the kids. You remember their names." They were walking through the center after the afternoon program. Kids were shooting baskets in the gym, and Cassandra could hear laughter echoing off the walls. "I used to think helping people meant writing checks," she admitted. "My family gives money to charities, but we never actually meet the people we're supposed to be helping." "Money helps," Kane said, "but showing up matters more. These kids need to know that someone cares about them as people, not just as problems to solve." Kane told her about his own childhood in this neighborhood. His father had worked at a steel mill until it closed when Kane was 12. The family lost their house and had to move in with relatives. Kane got a scholarship to play basketball at DePaul University, but he came back to help kids in his old neighborhood. My hero growing up was Michael Jordan, Kane said as they watched kids practice layups. He showed me that no matter where you come from, you can achieve great things if you work hard and believe in yourself. Cassandra's heart skipped. Michael Jordan? Yeah, he's amazing. He's done so much for kids like these. His foundation has built basketball courts all over the city. He visits programs like this one and talks to kids about staying in school and following their dreams. Cassandra felt sick to her stomach. She remembered her father's cold words at the charity gala. She thought about how her family's wealth might have come from closing steel mills like the one that cost Kane's family their home. Kane, she said quietly, what steel mill did your father work at? Southside Steel, he said. It was a good job. My dad worked there for 15 years. Then some rich company bought it and shut it down. Said it wasn't profitable enough. Cassandra's hands started shaking. She knew that story. She had heard her father tell it at dinner parties, bragging about how he had eliminated competition by buying smaller steel companies and closing them. That night, Cassandra couldn't eat dinner. She sat at the family table, looking at her father's satisfied face, thinking about Kane's family losing their home because of Thornfield Industries. At Northwestern University, Preston was having his own problems. Friends who used to invite him to parties suddenly seemed busy. His fraternity brothers were polite but distant. When he tried to join the business club, they said they weren't accepting new members, even though 3 other students had joined that same week. It's weird, Preston told his roommate, Jake. It's like people are avoiding me, but nobody will say why. Jake looked uncomfortable. Dude, haven't you heard what people are saying? What do you mean? About your dad and Michael Jordan. There's a video going around social media. Someone filmed what happened at that charity thing. Preston felt his stomach drop. What video? Jake showed him his phone. The video was shaky and dark, but you could clearly see Harrison Thornfield refusing to shake Michael Jordan's hand. You could hear his words about not associating with entertainers. The comments below the video were brutal. This has been viewed like 1,000,000 times, Jake said. People are pretty upset about it. Preston stared at the screen, watching his father humiliate one of the most respected athletes in the world. For the first time, he really understood what his father had done. Back in Lake Forest, Victoria noticed changes too. Phone calls that used to be returned quickly went unanswered. Invitations to exclusive events stopped coming. At the country club, conversations died when she walked into room. Her longtime friend Jennifer Walsh finally told her the truth over lunch. Victoria, people are talking, Jennifer said carefully. What Harrison did to Michael Jordan, it wasn't just rude. It was cruel. A lot of people are questioning whether they want to be associated with your family right now. Victoria felt tears in her eyes, but it was just one moment. Harrison was having a bad day. Was he, Jennifer asked? Or was he showing everyone who he really is? That question haunted Victoria for days. She started remembering other moments when Harrison had made cruel comments about people who were different from them. She thought about business deals where he had bragged about taking advantage of people who couldn't fight back. Had she married a good man who made one mistake, or had she married a bad man who finally got caught? Meanwhile, in a downtown Chicago office building, a well-dressed man in his 50s was having quiet meetings with some of the most powerful people in the city. James Patterson never raised his voice or made threats. He simply shared information and let people draw their own conclusions. I thought you should see this, Patterson said to the president of Chicago First Bank, sliding a folder across the desk. Inside were photos from the charity gala and a detailed report about Harrison Thornfield's business practices over the past 20 years. My goodness, the bank president said, studying the documents. I had no idea Mr. Thornfield had this history of discriminatory practices. Most people don't, Patterson said calmly. But character has a way of revealing itself eventually. After Patterson left, the bank president called his loan committee. Thornfield Industries had several large loans coming up for renewal. Perhaps it was time to review their relationship with the company. By late summer, Harrison could no longer ignore that something was seriously wrong. 3 major contracts had gone to competitors, despite his lower bids. 2 banks had suddenly demanded early payment on loans. The Chicago Tribune had started investigating Thornfield Industries' employment practices. Harrison sat in his office staring at a stack of rejection letters and cancelled contracts. His hands were shaking with rage and fear. Who was doing this to him? And why? He picked up his phone and called his private investigator. "I want you to find out who's been spreading lies about my company," Harrison said. "Someone is trying to destroy me, and I want to know who." As Harrison hung up the phone, he looked out at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there, an enemy was working against him. But Harrison Thornfield hadn't built an empire by backing down from fights. He was going to find out who was behind this, and he was going to make them pay. What Harrison didn't know was that his enemy had been hiding in plain sight all along. Harrison's private investigator sat across from him 3 weeks later, looking uncomfortable. The man had worked for powerful families for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like this. "Mr. Thornfield," Detective Ray Morrison said, opening his folder, "I've been investigating for 3 weeks, and I have to tell you, this is the strangest case I've ever worked on." "What do you mean, strange?" Harrison demanded. His face was thinner than it had been 6 months ago. He wasn't sleeping well. "Well, sir, nobody is lying about you. Nobody is spreading false information. Everyone I talked to has the same story. They saw a video of you refusing to shake Michael Jordan's hand at that charity gala. They decided they didn't want to do business with someone who would act that way." Harrison's fist hit the desk. "That's ridiculous. One moment doesn't define who I am." Detective Morrison shifted in his chair. "Sir, with respect, it wasn't just one moment. I found records of discrimination lawsuits against your companies. I found evidence of predatory lending practices in minority neighborhoods. I found complaints about environmental violations in poor communities while you kept your wealthy properties pristine." The room went silent. Harrison stared at the detective, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "People aren't attacking you because of Michael Jordan," Morrison continued. "They're finally paying attention to who you've always been." The handshake incident just made them look close. After the detective left, Harrison sat alone in his office as the sun set over Chicago. For the first time in his life, he felt truly afraid. It was one thing to fight an enemy. It was another thing entirely to fight the truth. At Northwestern University, Preston's life was falling apart. His girlfriend, Sarah, had broken up with him after seeing the video. His professors treated him coldly. Even the basketball team had kicked him off, claiming he was disruptive to team chemistry. Preston called home that night, his voice shaking. "Dad, I can't take this anymore," he said. "Everyone hates me because of what you did. I want to transfer to another school." "Absolutely not," Harrison snapped. "Thornfields don't run away from fights." "This isn't my fight," Preston shouted. "I didn't choose to humiliate Michael Jordan. You did that, and now I'm paying the price." The phone went quiet for a long moment. "You are a Thornfield," Harrison said coldly. "Start acting like one." The line went dead. Meanwhile, Victoria's world was crumbling in a different way. The Chicago Art Museum had removed her from their board of directors. The Children's Hospital had declined her offer to fund a new wing. Even her hairdresser had cancelled her appointments, claiming to be fully booked. But the worst moment came when she ran into her college roommate, Linda, at the grocery store. "Victoria," Linda said sadly, "I saw the video. Is that really who you married?" Victoria felt tears burning her eyes. "Linda, you don't understand. Harrison is a good man. He just made a mistake. Linda shook her head. I remember the girl you used to be. You cared about civil rights. You volunteered at soup kitchens. You believed all people deserved respect. What happened to her? That night, Victoria looked at herself in the mirror for a long time. She barely recognized the woman staring back. When had she become someone who stood by while her husband humiliated other people? When had she become someone who cared more about social status than basic human decency? At the Garfield Community Center, Cassandra was helping kids with homework when Kane pulled her aside. Cassie, I need to tell you something, he said quietly. Do you remember when I told you about my dad's job at the steel mill? She nodded, her stomach already sinking. I found out which company bought the mill and shut it down, Kane continued. It was Thornfield Industries. Cassandra felt the world spin around her. Kane, I know who you are, he said gently. I figured it out last week. Cassandra Thornfield. Your family's company destroyed my family's life. Cassandra started crying. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I was just a kid when that happened. Kane was quiet for a moment, watching tears run down her face. You know what's weird, he said finally. I should hate you, but I've watched you work with these kids for months. You're not like your father. You actually care about people. But my family's money comes from hurting people like you, Cassandra sobbed. Yeah, it does, Kane said. The question is, what are you going to do about it? In his downtown office, James Patterson was having another quiet meeting. This time he sat across from the CEO of Chicago's largest construction company. I thought you should know about some recent developments, Patterson said calmly, sliding a folder across the desk. It seems Thornfield Industries has a history of discriminatory hiring practices in construction projects. The CEO flipped through the documents, his eyebrows rising higher with each page. I had no idea, he said. We've been considering them for the new airport expansion project. Of course that's your decision, Patterson said, standing to leave. I just thought you'd want all the information before making such an important choice. After Patterson left, the CEO called his board of directors. The airport project was worth $500 million, the biggest contract Thornfield Industries had ever pursued. Harrison had been counting on it to save his company. By October, the Thornfield empire was in serious trouble. They had lost the airport contract, the bridge project, and 3 major real estate deals. Banks were calling in loans. Stock prices were falling. For the first time in 70 years, Thornfield Industries was facing possible bankruptcy. Harrison sat in his office late one evening, staring at financial reports that made no sense. How had everything gone wrong so quickly? 6 months ago, he had been untouchable. Now he was watching his life's work crumble. His secretary knocked on the door. Mr. Thornfield, there's someone here to see you. He says it's about your recent business troubles. Send him in, Harrison said wearily. A well-dressed man in his 50s walked into the office. He was tall, confident, and somehow familiar, though Harrison couldn't place him. Mr. Thornfield, the man said, extending his hand. My name is James Patterson. I think it's time we had a conversation. Harrison looked at the offered hand, remembering another handshake he had refused 6 months ago. Something cold moved through his chest. Who are you? Harrison asked, not taking the hand. Patterson smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I work for Michael Jordan, and we need to talk about the choices you've made. The room seemed to get smaller around Harrison. He felt his legs go weak as he sank into his chair. You, he whispered. You've been doing this to me. No, Mr. Thornfield, Patterson said calmly. You've been doing this to yourself for years. We just made sure people were paying attention. Harrison stared at the man who had quietly destroyed his empire. What do you want? Patterson reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Mr. Jordan has a proposition for you. I suggest you listen very carefully. The folder hit Harrison's desk with a soft thud that sounded like thunder in the quiet office. Because this is your last chance to save what's left of your family's legacy. Harrison's hands trembled as he opened the folder. Inside were documents that made his blood run cold. Financial records, meeting schedules, a detailed timeline of every business deal he had lost over the past 6 months. But the most shocking thing was a simple business card clipped to the front. James Patterson, Senior Business Advisor, Jordan Enterprises. You work for him, Harrison said, his voice barely a whisper. Patterson sat down across from the desk without being invited. I've worked with Michael Jordan for 8 years. I was standing right next to him that night at the charity gala when you refused to shake his hand. Harrison remembered now. The well-dressed man near the bar, watching everything with careful eyes. At first, Michael wanted to just forget about it. Patterson continued. But then I started thinking about what kind of man refuses to show basic respect to someone who has done so much good for this city. So I did some research. Patterson reached over and flipped to the next page in the folder. It showed a map of Chicago with red dots marking locations. Every red dot represents a family your business practices have hurt over the past 20 years, Patterson explained. Families who lost their homes when you closed steel mills. Workers you fired for trying to form unions. Minority-owned businesses you deliberately undercut until they went bankrupt. Harrison stared at the map. There were hundreds of red dots scattered across the city. This isn't about revenge, Mr. Thornfield, Patterson said quietly. This is about justice. You've spent decades hurting people who couldn't fight back. The only difference now is that someone finally decided to fight back for them. What do you want? Harrison asked, his voice cracking. I want you to understand something, Patterson said, standing up. Michael Jordan didn't become successful just because he could play basketball. He became successful because he treats people with respect. He listens to others. He uses his power to help people instead of hurting them. Patterson walked to the window and looked out at the Chicago skyline. Do you know how many businesses Michael owns in this city? How many people respect his opinion? How many doors open when he makes a phone call? Harrison felt sick. He was beginning to understand the scope of what he was facing. Every person I've talked to over the past 6 months, Patterson continued, every bank president, every city official, every business leader, they all made their own choice about whether to continue working with you. I never threatened anyone. I never lied about anything. I just told them the truth about who you really are. That evening, while Harrison sat in his office trying to process what he had learned, each member of his family was dealing with their own crisis. At Northwestern, Preston packed his belongings into boxes. He had finally decided to transfer to another school, despite his father's anger. He couldn't take the isolation and shame anymore. His roommate Jake helped him carry boxes to his car. I'm sorry this happened to you, man, Jake said. I know you're not like your dad. Preston stopped loading boxes and looked at his friend. But I never spoke up either. I knew he said terrible things sometimes, and I just stayed quiet. Maybe I am like him. No, Jake said firmly. You're here packing your stuff because you can't stand what he did. That makes you different. 40 miles away, Victoria sat in her mansion's library, surrounded by photo albums from happier times. She found pictures from her college days, when she had volunteered at inner-city schools and believed she could change the world. She also found wedding photos, where she looked radiant next to a young Harrison who seemed full of hope and ambition. When had that ambition turned into cruelty? When had her idealism died? Victoria picked up her phone and dialed her old college roommate. Linda, she said when the phone was answered. It's Victoria. I've been thinking about what you said at the store, about the woman I used to be. I think I think I want to find her again. At the community center, Cassandra was helping kids clean up after dinner when Kane approached her. I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, he said, about what you can do to make things right. Cassandra looked up from wiping down tables. I don't know how to fix what my family has done. The damage is too big. Maybe you can't fix the past, Kane said, but you can help build a better future. These kids need advocates. They need people who understand how the system works and can help them navigate it. He gestured around the community center where children were playing games and teenagers were doing homework. Your father took away opportunities from families like mine, Kane continued, but you could help create new opportunities for the next generation. Cassandra felt something shift inside her chest. For the first time since learning the truth about her family's business, she felt a sense of purpose. What would I need to do, she asked. Meanwhile, in a quiet restaurant downtown, James Patterson was having dinner with Michael Jordan. They had chosen a corner table where they could talk privately. How did the meeting with Thornfield go? Jordan asked. About like we expected, Patterson replied. He's scared, angry, still doesn't fully understand that this is about more than business. Jordan nodded, cutting his steak thoughtfully. And his family? The wife is starting to wake up. The daughter has been volunteering at the Garfield Center for months. She's genuinely trying to make amends. The son is struggling but seems to understand that what his father did was wrong. Good, Jordan said quietly. They don't deserve to suffer for his mistakes. But they need to understand the consequences of staying silent when someone they love hurts other people. Patterson studied his friend's face. Are you sure about the terms we discussed? You're giving him a lot of chances to walk away. Jordan was quiet for a moment, thinking about the 16-year-old nephew who had tried to take his own life after watching that handshake refusal. David was doing better now, but the memory of that phone call from the hospital still haunted Jordan's dreams. Everyone deserves a chance to choose who they want to be, Jordan said finally. Thornfield has spent his whole life choosing to be cruel. Tomorrow he'll have to choose whether he wants to be better. The next morning, Harrison arrived at his office to find another visitor waiting for him. This time it was his son, Preston, who had driven down from Northwestern without calling first. Dad, we need to talk, Preston said. Harrison looked at his son. Really looked at him for the first time in months. Preston had lost weight. There were dark circles under his eyes. He looked exhausted and sad. I'm transferring to a different school, Preston said. But before I go, I want you to know something. I'm ashamed to be your son right now. The words hit Harrison like a physical blow. Not because we're losing money, Preston continued. Not because people are being mean to us. I'm ashamed because of what you did to Michael Jordan and because of all the other terrible things I'm learning about our family's business. Preston sat down across from his father's desk, in the same chair where James Patterson had sat the night before. I love you, Dad, Preston said, tears in his eyes. But I can't defend what you've done anymore. And I can't pretend that being rich makes it okay to treat people like they're less than human. Harrison opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. Looking at his son's face, he saw something he had never seen before: profound disappointment. Whatever Mr. Jordan's people want from you, Preston said as he stood to leave, I hope you seriously consider it. Because right now, you're not just losing your business, you're losing your family too. After Preston left, Harrison sat alone in his office for 3 hours, staring at the folder James Patterson had left behind. Inside were the terms of Michael Jordan's final offer. Reading them made Harrison feel sicker than he had ever felt in his life. But for the first time, he was beginning to understand that feeling sick might be exactly what he deserved. 3 days later, Harrison sat in his car outside the Garfield Community Center, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. Inside that building was Michael Jordan, speaking to the same kids that his daughter had been secretly helping for months. He didn't know why he had come. James Patterson had told him this was where he could find Jordan if he wanted to talk before making his final decision about the terms. But now, sitting here, Harrison felt like a coward. Through the windows he could see children gathered around a tall figure in a basketball jersey. Even from a distance, Harrison could see their faces glowing with excitement and hope. The same kids whose families his business practices had hurt over the years. Harrison's phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Cassandra told me where you are. Be brave, Harrison, for once in your life. Be brave." Taking a deep breath that felt like swallowing broken glass, Harrison got out of his car and walked toward the community center. Inside, the air was filled with the sound of bouncing basketballs and children's laughter. Michael Jordan was showing a group of 10-year-olds how to shoot free throws, patiently correcting their form and encouraging every attempt. "Keep your elbow straight, Kane," Jordan said to a small boy who was struggling with his shot. "Basketball is like life. It's all about balance and practice." Harrison stood in the doorway, watching. This wasn't the entertainer he had dismissed at the charity gala. This was a man teaching children about discipline, confidence, and believing in themselves. A teenage girl noticed Harrison first. "Hey, aren't you that rich guy who was mean to Mr. Jordan?" The gym went quiet. Every head turned toward Harrison, including Jordan's. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Cassandra appeared beside her father. She had been helping with homework in another room and had seen him arrive. "Dad," she said quietly, "what are you doing here?" Jordan handed the basketball to one of the kids and walked over. Up close, Harrison could see that Jordan was even taller than he remembered. But what struck him most was the calm confidence in Jordan's eyes. Not arrogance, but the quiet strength of someone who knew exactly who they were. "Mr. Thornfield," Jordan said evenly, "I didn't expect to see you here." Harrison opened his mouth, but no words came out. Looking around the room, he saw Kane Williams watching him with guarded eyes. He saw children whose families had probably been affected by his business decisions. He saw his own daughter, who had been trying to undo the damage he had caused. "I wanted to," Harrison started, then stopped. "I needed to see this place, to understand what you do here." Jordan studied Harrison's face for a long moment. "Would you like Kane to show you around?" Kane stepped forward reluctantly. Harrison could see the young man's jaw was tight with controlled anger. "This is our tutoring center," Kane said, leading Harrison to a room where teenagers were helping younger kids with homework. "A lot of these families can't afford private tutors like your kids had." They moved to the kitchen, where volunteers were preparing dinner for families who couldn't afford enough food at home. "This is where we serve meals," Kane continued. "Some of these kids, this is the only hot meal they'll get today." Harrison watched a little girl, maybe 8 years old, carefully eating every bite of her dinner. Her clothes were clean but worn, and her shoes had holes in them. "My sister Emma goes here sometimes," the girl told her friend. "Mom works 2 jobs, but we still don't have enough money for food every day." Harrison felt something crack inside his chest. This little girl could have been his own daughter, if he had been born into different circumstances. They ended the tour back in the gym, where Jordan was now playing a gentle game of basketball with the younger children. Harrison watched him high-five a boy who made his first basket, saw him encourage a girl who was afraid to try. "He comes here every month," Kane said quietly. "Not for cameras or publicity, just to spend time with the kids. He remembers all their names. He asks about their grades and their families." "Why?" Harrison asked, his voice barely audible. Kane looked at him with surprise. "Because he cares about them. Because he knows that someone believing in you can change your whole life." Kane paused, then added, "My dad worked at Southside Steel for 15 years before your company shut it down. I was 12 when we lost our house. I thought my life was over." Harrison felt the words like punches to his stomach. "But then I saw Michael Jordan play," Kane continued. "I saw someone who looked like me achieving incredible things. It gave me hope. It made me believe that where you start doesn't have to be where you finish." Harrison was quiet for a long moment, watching Jordan teach a young boy how to dribble between his legs. "I never thought about the people," Harrison said finally. "When I made business decisions, I just looked at numbers on paper. I never thought about children losing their homes, families going hungry." "You never wanted to think about them," Kane corrected, "because if you had seen us as real people, you couldn't have done what you did." After the evening programs ended, Jordan walked over to where Harrison was sitting on the bleachers. Cassandra had gone home, and most of the children had been picked up by their parents. "What did you think?" Jordan asked, sitting down beside Harrison. "I think," Harrison said slowly, "that I've been wrong about a lot of things for a very long time." They sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the echo of children's voices in the empty gym. "Patterson told me about your terms," Harrison said finally. "The public apology, the donations, the community service." Jordan nodded. "And?" Harrison was quiet for a long moment. "I don't understand why you're giving me a chance to make things right. After what I did to you, after what my business has done to so many families, why not just destroy me completely?" Jordan turned to look at Harrison directly. "Because destroying you wouldn't help any of these kids. But if you genuinely change, if you use your resources and influence to help instead of hurt, then something good can come from all this pain." "You really think I can change?" Harrison asked. "After all these years of being what I've been?" "I think," Jordan said carefully, "that every day you wake up you get to choose who you want to be. You've been choosing to be someone who hurts people, but you could choose to be someone who helps people instead." Harrison looked around the community center, at the basketball hoops where kids learned about teamwork, at the tables where they got help with homework, at the kitchen where volunteers made sure no child went hungry. "If I agree to your terms," Harrison said, "if I do the apology and the community service and everything else, will you forgive me for what I did to you?" Jordan was quiet for a long time before answering. "Forgiveness isn't something you earn by checking boxes off a list," he said finally. "Forgiveness comes when the person you've hurt sees that you've genuinely become someone different, someone better." Jordan stood up and extended his hand, the same gesture Harrison had refused 8 months ago. "The question is," Jordan said, "do you want to be someone different?" Harrison stared at the offered hand. This time, he knew that shaking it would mean more than just politeness. It would mean admitting he had been wrong. It would mean committing to change his entire life. It would mean giving up everything he thought made him superior to other people. Harrison reached out and took Jordan's hand. "Yes," he said quietly, "I want to be someone different." But even as he said the words, Harrison wasn't sure if he really meant them or if he was just desperate to save what was left of his family's empire. The hardest test was still to come. 2 weeks after shaking Michael Jordan's hand at the community center, Harrison faced the hardest moment of his life. He sat at the head of the dining room table in his mansion, with Victoria, Preston, and Cassandra staring at him. On the table between them lay the folder of terms that James Patterson had given him. "I've made a decision," Harrison said, his voice shaking slightly. "I'm going to accept Michael Jordan's terms." The room fell silent. Victoria's fork clinked against her plate as she set it down. "What does that mean exactly?" Preston asked. He had come home from his new college for the weekend, looking healthier but still wary around his father. Harrison opened the folder and read the terms out loud. "Public apology for discriminatory business practices. Donation of half my personal wealth to community organizations. federal oversight of all Thornfield Industries operations, 1,000 hours of community service at the Garfield Community Center. His voice cracked on the final term, public admission that my refusal to shake Mr. Jordan's hand was motivated by racism. Cassandra reached across the table and squeezed her father's hand. "Dad, that's really brave." But Preston wasn't convinced. "Is it brave, or are you just scared of losing everything?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Harrison looked at his son and saw his own doubt reflected back at him. "I don't know," Harrison admitted. "Maybe both." Victoria spoke for the first time. "What about the business? What about our employee?" "The federal oversight will be difficult," Harrison said. "We'll have to change our hiring practices, our lending policies, everything. Some people might lose their jobs during the restructuring." "People who helped you discriminate against others?" Cassandra asked. Harrison nodded reluctantly. "Yes, people who followed my orders because I was their boss." Over the next few days, Harrison began the painful process of implementing the terms. The hardest part was telling his executive team about the federal oversight. He called a meeting in the Thornfield Industries boardroom, where he had made so many decisions that hurt other people. Effective immediately, Harrison announced to his shocked executives, "All our hiring, lending, and contracting practices will be monitored by federal auditors. We will be required to meet diversity targets and eliminate discriminatory policies." CFO Robert Sterling, who had worked for the company for 20 years, slammed his hand on the table. "Harrison, this will cost us millions. Our profit margins will be cut in half." "Maybe they should be," Harrison said quietly. Sterling stared at his boss like he was looking at a stranger. "What happened to you? 6 months ago you would have fought this with everything you had." "6 months ago, I was blind," Harrison replied. "Now I'm trying to see clearly." 3 executives quit that day, including Sterling. They couldn't work for a company that put social responsibility above maximum profits. As Harrison watched them clean out their offices, he wondered if he was destroying everything his family had built, or if he was finally building something worth keeping. The announcement of the federal oversight sent shockwaves through Chicago's business community. Harrison's phone rang constantly with calls from other wealthy families demanding to know what he was doing. "You're setting a dangerous precedent," warned his longtime friend and fellow millionaire Charles Watson. "If you admit to discrimination, every minority group in the city will come after the rest of us next." "Maybe they should," Harrison said, surprising himself with his own words. "Harrison, think about what you're saying," Charles argued. "We built this city. We created jobs and opportunities. We can't be blamed for every social problem." Charles, Harrison said slowly, "I spent 30 years actively making those social problems worse. I think it's time I spent some time trying to fix them." The friendship ended with Charles hanging up on him. But the hardest conversation came when Harrison had to tell his own father's oldest friend, Judge William Morrison, about his decision. "Your father is rolling over in his grave," the elderly judge said when Harrison visited him at his retirement home. "Richard Thornfield built that company to last generations. You're throwing it all away for political correctness." "I'm throwing away the parts that were built on hurting other people," Harrison replied. "Maybe that's what should have happened years ago." "You sound like one of those bleeding heart liberals," Judge Morrison sneered. "What's next? Are you going to start hugging criminals and apologizing to welfare cheats?" Harrison looked at the old man who had been like a grandfather to him and realized that Judge Morrison represented everything Harrison was trying to leave behind. "I'm going to start treating all people like human beings," Harrison said. "Maybe you should try it sometime." As Harrison left the retirement home, he felt something he hadn't expected: relief. For the first time in his life, he had stood up to the older generation that had taught him to see some people as less valuable than others. But the real test came when Harrison started his community service at the Garfield Community Center. On his first day, he put on jeans and a work shirt instead of his usual expensive suits. His hands shook as he walked through the front. Ken Williams was waiting for him with a mop and bucket. "You're here to work, not to be honored," Kane said firmly. "You'll clean floors, serve meals, and help with whatever needs doing, just like any other volunteer." Harrison nodded and took the mop. As he began cleaning the bathroom floors, he thought about all the times he had complained about his office cleaning staff not doing their job perfectly. Now he understood how hard this work really was. During lunch preparation, Harrison worked alongside Maria Santos, whose husband had lost his job when Thornfield Industries closed a factory 3 years earlier. "I know who you are," Maria said quietly as they chopped vegetables together. "Your company destroyed my family's life." Harrison stopped chopping and looked at her. "I'm sorry. I'm trying to make things right." "Sorry doesn't pay my rent," Maria said. "Sorry doesn't give my kids back the home they lost." Harrison had no answer for that. What could he say? She was right. "But," Maria continued, still chopping vegetables without looking at him, "my daughter, Rosa, comes to the tutoring program here. She says you've been helping her with math homework." Harrison nodded. "She's very smart. She just needed someone to explain fractions differently." "She doesn't know who you are," Maria said. "To her, you're just Mr. Harrison, who's good at math and patient when she makes mistakes." They worked in silence for a few minutes before Maria spoke again. "Maybe that's who you really are. Maybe the man who destroyed my family's life was the fake person, and Mr. Harrison who helps with homework is the real one." That evening, Harrison came home exhausted and dirty. His hands were raw from cleaning, and his back ached from lifting heavy boxes. Victoria found him sitting on their bedroom floor, still in his work clothes. "How was it?" she asked gently. "Harder than I expected," Harrison admitted. "Not the physical work. That part is actually satisfying. But looking at the people I hurt, seeing the consequences of my decisions in their faces, it's almost unbearable." Victoria sat down beside him on the floor. "Do you regret agreeing to the terms?" Harrison was quiet for a long time. "I regret that it took so long for me to see what I was doing wrong. I regret that I hurt so many people. But no, I don't regret trying to make things right." He looked at his wife, really looked at her, for the first time in years. "Victoria, I know I've been a terrible husband and father. I've been selfish and cruel and blind to how my actions affected others. I don't know if you can forgive me, but I want you to know that I'm trying to become the man you deserve to marry." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I've been waiting 40 years for you to say something like that." As they sat together on the floor of their mansion, surrounded by all the wealth that Harrison's cruelty had bought them, both of them began to understand that the hardest part of changing wasn't giving up money or status. The hardest part was admitting that the people they had been for so long were people they no longer wanted to be. 3 months into Harrison's community service, the Chicago Tribune published an investigation that changed everything. The front page headline read, "Thornfield Industries, Decades of Discrimination Exposed." Harrison sat in his office early that morning reading the article with growing horror. Every discriminatory practice, every predatory loan, every environmental violation was laid out in devastating detail. But what made him feel sickest were the personal stories. The article told about the Williams family losing their home when Harrison closed the steel mill. It described Maria Santos working 3 jobs after her husband was laid off from a Thornfield factory. It revealed that Thornfield Industries had systematically rejected loan applications from minority families, even when they had better credit than approved white applicants. Most damaging was a section about the Riverside Elementary School, built next to a Thornfield chemical plant. The article showed that Harrison's company had been dumping toxic waste for years, causing higher rates of asthma and learning disabilities in the predominantly Black and Hispanic neighborhood. Harrison's hands shook as he read quotes from parents whose children had gotten sick because of his company's illegal dumping. "My daughter Maya has asthma so bad she can't play outside," said Teresa Rodriguez. "The doctors say it's from the air pollution, but nobody would listen to us for years because we're just poor people." When Victoria arrived at the office an hour later, she found Harrison crying at his desk. "I poisoned children," he said without looking up. "I actually poisoned children to save money on proper waste disposal." Victoria read the article over his shoulder, her face growing pale. "Harrison, did you know about the dumping, I mean?" "I knew," Harrison whispered. "The environmental team told me it would cost $2 million to dispose of the chemicals properly. I told them to find a cheaper way. I knew they were cutting corners, but I didn't want to know the details." The article's publication triggered immediate consequences. Federal investigators opened criminal probes into Thornfield Industries. The EPA launched an environmental review. Dozens of families filed lawsuits seeking damages for health problems caused by the illegal dumping. But the most devastating consequence was personal. That evening, Preston called from college, his voice cold with anger. "I read the article, Dad. I read about the kids who got sick because you were too cheap to properly dispose of toxic waste. Preston, I'm trying to make things right. You poisoned children," Preston shouted. "Little kids who couldn't defend themselves. How do you make that right?" The phone went dead. Preston didn't speak to his father for 2 months. Cassandra's reaction was different but equally painful. She came to Harrison's office that afternoon, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, I've been working with some of those kids," he said quietly. "Maya Rodriguez comes to the tutoring program. She carries an inhaler everywhere because she can't breathe properly." Harrison felt like he was drowning. "Cassie, I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," she interrupted. "There's a difference." But unlike Preston, Cassandra didn't walk away. "I'm going to keep working at the community center, and I'm going to help those families get the medical care they need because of what our company did to them." "How?" Harrison asked. "I'm going to use my trust fund," Cassandra said firmly. "The money you gave me came from hurting people. I'm going to use it to help them instead." At the community center, Harrison's arrival that week was met with open hostility. Parents who had been polite but distant before now glared at him with undisguised anger. Someone had taped the newspaper article to the wall where everyone could see it. "You're not welcome here," said Carlos Martinez, whose son had been hospitalized twice for asthma attacks. "You made our kids sick, and now you want to pretend you're a good person by mopping our floors." Harrison stood in the center of the room, facing 24 angry parents whose children he had harmed. Kane Williams stepped forward. "Mr. Martinez is right to be angry," Kane said. "We all are. But Mr. Thornfield is here because he's trying to make amends. The question is, do we give him that chance, or do we turn him away? What could he possibly do to make up for poisoning our children?" demanded Teresa Rodriguez, Maya's mother. Harrison found his voice. "Nothing," he said quietly. "There's nothing I can do to undo the harm I've caused. I can't give your children back their health. I can't take back the years of pollution." The room was silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. "But," Harrison continued, "I can make sure it never happens again. I can use every dollar I have to clean up the contamination. I can pay for the best medical care for every child who got sick. And I can spend the rest of my life trying to protect other children from people like the person I used to be." Teresa Rodriguez studied Harrison's face for a long moment. "My Maya, she likes you. She says you're patient when you help her with reading, even when she has to stop for her inhaler. She's a remarkable little girl," Harrison said. "She's braver than I've ever been. She doesn't know who you are," Teresa continued. "To her, you're just Mr. Harrison who brings her juice when she has trouble breathing." Teresa was quiet for a moment. then made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. "Maya needs surgery to help her breathing," she said. "The insurance won't cover it all. It costs $50,000. "I'll pay for it," Harrison said immediately. "And for any other child who needs medical care because of what my company did." "That's not enough," Carlos Martinez said angrily. "Money doesn't fix everything." "You're right," Harrison agreed. "But it's a start, and I'll do whatever else you think might help." Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Some of the families began to soften toward Harrison, not because they forgave him, but because they saw genuine change in his actions. Harrison didn't just pay for medical bills, he researched the best specialists and personally drove families to appointments when they needed transportation. He learned the names of every affected child and asked about their health every time he saw their parents. When 8-year-old Miguel Santos had an asthma attack during a community center event, Harrison was the one who carried him to the car and rode with the family to the hospital, holding Miguel's hand and telling him jokes to keep him calm. "You saved my son's life tonight," Miguel's father told Harrison in the hospital waiting room. "I still hate what you did to our neighborhood. But tonight, you saved my boy." The moment that changed everything came when Harrison met Maya Rodriguez for the first time since learning about her asthma. She was in the tutoring room, struggling with a math problem and breathing heavily from her inhaler. "Hi, Mr. Harrison," Maya said with a smile. "Can you help me with fractions again?" Harrison sat down beside the little girl whose health he had destroyed and helped her with homework just like he had been doing for months. But this time, every wheeze from her damaged lungs felt like a knife in his heart. When the session ended, Maya hugged Harrison goodbye like she always did. "Mr. Harrison, why are you crying?" she asked, looking up at his face with concern. Harrison knelt down so he was at her eye level. For a moment he considered telling her the truth, that he was the man whose company had made her sick. But looking at her innocent, trusting face, he couldn't bring himself to destroy her faith in him. "I'm just happy that you're feeling better today," he said. Which was true. "Me too," Maya said. "My mom says I might not need my inhaler so much after I have my surgery. Will you still help me with math even if I can breathe better?" "Always," Harrison promised, his voice breaking. "I'll always be here to help you." As Maya skipped away to find her mother, Harrison realized that this little girl had become the most important person in his world. Not because she forgave him, she didn't even know there was anything to forgive, but because helping her learn and grow had become the first purely good thing he had done in decades. That night, Harrison called Michael Jordan. "I understand now," Harrison said when Jordan answered the phone. "Why you're making me do community service instead of just paying money. It's not about punishment, it's about connection." "What do you mean?" Jordan asked. "When I was just writing checks to charity, the people I was supposedly helping weren't real to me," Harrison explained. "They were just tax deductions. But now I know Maya's favorite color, and Miguel's dreams, and Kane's struggles. They're not just names on a list anymore, they're people I care about." Jordan was quiet for a moment. "And how does that feel?" "Terrifying," Harrison admitted. "Because now I understand that every business decision I make affects real people. People with names and faces and dreams. I can never go back to treating them like numbers on a spreadsheet." "Good," Jordan said simply. "That's exactly the point." As Harrison hung up the phone, he realized that Michael Jordan had given him something more valuable than he had ever imagined, the ability to see other people as fully human. It was a gift that would change not just Harrison's life, but the lives of everyone he would touch for the rest of his days. 6 months after the Tribune article, Harrison had completed 800 hours of his community service. His life had settled into a routine he never could have imagined. Mornings at Thornfield Industries, implementing the federal oversight changes, and afternoons at the Garfield Community Center, helping children with homework and serving meals. But James Patterson had one more surprise for him. "Mr. Jordan would like to meet with you privately," Patterson said when he called Harrison's office on a cold December morning. "There's something important he needs to tell you." They met at the same quiet restaurant where Jordan and Patterson had planned their strategy 2 years earlier. This time, Jordan looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his usual confident smile was missing. "Thank you for coming," Jordan said as Harrison sat down across from him. "I know you've been working hard at the community center. Kane tells me the families have started to trust you." "Some of them," Harrison said carefully. "Others still see me as the man who poisoned their children. I don't blame them." Jordan nodded. "That's understandable. But that's not why I asked you here." Jordan was quiet for a long moment, studying Harrison's face. "I need to tell you the real reason I went after your family so aggressively," Jordan said finally. "It wasn't just about the handshake. It wasn't even about your business practices, though those were terrible enough." Harrison felt his stomach clench. "What do you mean?" Jordan reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph. It showed a young black teenager, maybe 16 years old, with Jordan's eyes and smile. "This is my nephew David," Jordan said quietly. "He was at the charity gala that night. He saw everything." Harrison looked at the photo, confused. "I don't understand. David has always looked up to me." Jordan continued, his voice getting softer. "He struggled with depression and anxiety since he was young. Being a black teenager in America isn't easy, especially when you're questioning your own worth and wondering if you'll ever be accepted." Jordan took the photo back, holding it carefully. That night at the gala, David was so excited to meet other successful people. He thought it would be inspiring to see his uncle being respected by Chicago's elite. Harrison's hands started to shake. He was beginning to understand where this was going. "When you refused to shake my hand," Jordan said, his voice breaking slightly, "when you called me just an entertainer in front of all those people, David saw the whole thing." "Oh no," Harrison whispered. "He left the gala early. He was devastated. He kept saying, 'If they can treat Uncle Mike that way, what chance do I have? If someone as successful as him isn't good enough for them, then I'll never be good enough for anyone.'" Jordan wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. 3 days later, David tried to take his own life. The words hit Harrison like a physical blow. He felt the air leave his lungs and his vision blur. "He survived," Jordan continued quickly, "but barely. He spent 2 weeks in the hospital, then months in therapy. The doctors said your public humiliation of me triggered a complete breakdown of his self-worth." Harrison felt like he was going to be sick. Is David okay now?" "He's better," Jordan said. "He's in college now, studying to become a counselor so he can help other young people who feel hopeless. But it took years of therapy and work to get him there." "I almost killed him," Harrison said, his voice barely audible. "My prejudice almost killed an innocent child. That's why I couldn't let it go," Jordan explained. "It wasn't about my ego or my reputation. It was about a 16-year-old boy who almost died because he saw that no matter how high black people climb, there will always be people like you, ready to tear us down." Harrison was crying now, tears streaming down his face in the middle of the restaurant. "The $1 billion you've lost in business deals," Jordan continued, "the social isolation, the federal oversight, none of that was revenge. It was justice. You needed to understand that your actions have consequences beyond what you can see." "Can I?" Harrison struggled to speak through his tears. "Can I meet him? Can I apologize to David?" Jordan was quiet for a long moment. "He knows about your work at the community center. He's been following your transformation from a distance. He wants to meet you, but not for an apology." "What does he want?" "He wants to see for himself that people can change," Jordan said. "For the past 2 years, He's been struggling with the question of whether there's any hope for healing the hatred in this world. Your transformation could help him believe that change is possible. A week later, Harrison sat in the community center's main room, more nervous than he had ever been in his life. Through the windows, he could see David Jordan walking toward the building with his uncle. David was tall like Michael, but quieter, more thoughtful. When he entered the room, Harrison could see intelligence and pain in his eyes, the look of someone who had suffered but chosen to grow from it. "Mr. Thornfield," David said, extending his hand. Harrison took it, remembering the handshake he had refused with David's uncle 2 years earlier. "I'm sorry," Harrison said. "I'm so deeply sorry for what my ignorance and hatred almost cost you." David nodded. "I know you are. The question is, what are you going to do with that sorrow?" They talked for an hour. David told Harrison about his darkest moments, about feeling like he would never be accepted in a world that saw him as less than human. Harrison talked about his own journey from hatred to understanding, about learning to see people as individuals rather than stereotypes. "You know what's strange?" David said as their conversation was ending. "When I was in the hospital, I hated you so much. I thought you represented everything that was wrong with the world." "I did," Harrison said quietly. "But watching you change these past months," David continued, "seeing you actually working to help the kids in this neighborhood, it's given me something I didn't expect." "What's that?" "Hope," David said simply. "If someone like you can become someone like the person you are now, then maybe there really is a chance for this world to be better." That evening, Harrison called his family together for dinner. Victoria, Preston, and Cassandra sat around the table, looking at their father's tear-stained face. "I need to tell you something," Harrison said, "about why Michael Jordan really went after our family." He told them about David, about the suicide attempt, about how his moment of prejudice had almost cost a young man his life. Preston was the first to speak. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "Neither did I," Harrison said. "That's the point. I was so focused on my own pride and prejudices that I never considered how my actions might affect an innocent teenager who was watching." Cassandra reached across the table and took her father's hand. "What can we do to help David now?" "We can continue changing," Harrison said. "We can make sure that other kids like David see that people are capable of growth and redemption. We can use our privilege to fight against the hatred that almost killed him." Victoria spoke last. "Harrison, I've been proud of the changes you've made these past months, but knowing that your growth helped save a young man's faith in humanity, that makes me prouder than I've ever been." Over the following weeks, something beautiful began to happen. David started volunteering at the community center alongside Harrison. The young man who had almost given up on life began working with other teenagers who were struggling with depression and hopelessness. "Mr. Harrison saved my life," David told a group of kids during a workshop on overcoming adversity. "Not by apologizing, but by proving that people can change. That gave me hope when I had none." Harrison watched from the back of the room as David shared his story with teenagers who looked like him, who faced the same struggles with acceptance and self-worth. The young man spoke with quiet authority about resilience, about finding purpose in pain, about believing in the possibility of change. After the workshop, David approached Harrison. "I've been thinking about something," David said. "What you did to my uncle that night was terrible, but in a strange way, it led to something beautiful." "How?" Harrison asked. "It forced you to confront who you really were," David explained. "And your transformation has inspired me to help other kids who feel hopeless. So your worst moment became the beginning of hope for a lot of people." Harrison was quiet for a moment. Do you think you can forgive me for almost taking your life away?" David smiled. The same warm smile as his uncle. "I think forgiveness is something that happens over time, through actions, not words." But seeing you here, working with these kids, using your story to help others understand that change is possible. Yeah, I think I can forgive you." That night, Harrison sat in his home office, looking at a picture that David had given him. It showed David with a group of teenagers from the community center, all of them smiling and laughing together. On the back, David had written, "Mr. Harrison, thank you for showing me that even the most broken people can become whole again. Your transformation saved my life and gave me purpose. David Jordan." Harrison realized that the handshake he had refused 2 years ago had cost his family more than $1 billion. But more importantly, it had almost cost a young man his life. The handshake he had finally given had cost him his pride, his prejudices, and his old way of seeing the world. But it had given him something infinitely more valuable, the chance to help heal the damage his hatred had caused, and the opportunity to spend the rest of his life making sure that no other young person would ever feel as hopeless as David had felt that terrible night. 1 year after learning about David's suicide attempt, Harrison stood in the same spot where he had first refused to shake Michael Jordan's hand. The Palmer House Hotel was hosting a charity gala, but this time Harrison wasn't a guest of honor. He was working. "Excuse me, sir," Harrison said politely to a wealthy businessman. "Would you like me to take your coat?" The man looked confused. "Don't I know you? Aren't you Harrison Thornfield?"
"Yes, sir," Harrison replied. "I'm volunteering tonight to help raise money for youth mental health programs."
The businessman stared at him like he was seeing a ghost. 2 years ago, Harrison Thornfield would never have taken anyone's coat. Now here he was, hanging up jackets and directing people to their tables with a genuine smile. At the Garfield Community Center, Harrison had completed his 1,000 hours of required community service 6 months ago, but he kept coming back every day because the work had become more important to him than anything else in his life. "Mr. Harrison," called out Maya Rodriguez as she ran into the tutoring room. Her breathing was much better after her surgery, and she could play outside without getting tired. "Can you help me with my science project?" "Of course," Harrison said, kneeling down to her level. "What are you studying?" "Water pollution," Maya said seriously. "I want to learn about how chemicals get into drinking water and make people sick." Harrison's chest tightened. Maya didn't know that his company had been one of the sources of pollution in her neighborhood, but her curiosity about environmental protection showed how smart and caring she was. "That's a very important topic," Harrison said. "Let's start by learning about how clean water systems work." For the next hour, Harrison helped Maya research water treatment plants and environmental protection laws. Watching her excitement about learning gave him more satisfaction than any business deal ever had. At the community center, Harrison had become more than just a volunteer. He had become a mentor, a friend, and for some kids, almost like a grandfather figure. Kane Williams often watched him with amazement. "You know what's incredible?" Kane told his girlfriend Sarah one evening. 2 years ago, I hated Harrison Thornfield more than anyone in the world. Now I trust him with the kids in our program." "What changed?" Sarah asked. "He did," Kane said simply. "Not just his actions, but his heart. You can't fake the way he lights up when Maya shows him her artwork, or how he stays late to help teenagers with college applications." Kane was right. Harrison's transformation wasn't just about following Michael Jordan's terms anymore. It had become about finding purpose and meaning in his life for the first time. One evening, while Harrison was helping clean up after dinner, a new family arrived at the community center. Robert Williams, Kane's father, walked in with his wife, looking nervous and embarrassed. "Kane said you serve meals here sometimes," Robert said quietly. "We're having a hard month. My work hours got cut, and we can't afford groceries right now." Harrison looked at the man whose job he had eliminated years ago when he closed the steel mill. Robert didn't recognize him as the wealthy businessman, who had destroyed his livelihood. "Of course," Harrison said gently. "Let me fix you both a plate. We have plenty of food." As Harrison served dinner to Robert and his wife, he thought about how his business decisions had rippled through generations. Closing that steel mill hadn't just hurt Robert, it had affected Kane's childhood, his education opportunities, his family's stability. But now Harrison was feeding Robert's family when they needed help. It wasn't justice exactly, but it was a small step toward healing. After the Williams family left, Kane pulled Harrison aside. "Do you know who that was?" Kane asked. "Your father," Harrison replied. "Do you know what you did to him?" Harrison nodded. "I cost him his job when I closed the Southside steel plant. I destroyed his family's financial security." Kane studied Harrison's face. "And how does it feel to serve him dinner?" Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Like the smallest possible beginning of making things right. At home, the Thornfield family had changed as much as Harrison had. Victoria had started her own non-profit organization focused on environmental justice, using her social connections to pressure other wealthy families to clean up pollution in poor neighborhoods. Preston had transferred to DePaul University to study social work. He was planning to open a counseling center for teenagers struggling with depression and suicidal thoughts. Inspired by David Jordan's story, Cassandra had used her entire trust fund to establish a scholarship program for students from families affected by discriminatory business practices. She was also engaged to Kane Williams, and they were planning to expand the community center's programs. "I never thought I'd see the day," Victoria told Harrison one evening as they watched the news together. "When our children would be prouder of helping people than of having money. I never thought I'd see the day when I would be either," Harrison replied. The news was covering a story about Thornfield Industries' latest project, a massive cleanup of contaminated soil in 3 Chicago neighborhoods. The company was spending $50 million of its own money to remove pollutants that it had dumped illegally over the years. "The cleanup will take 2 years," the reporter said, "but it represents one of the largest corporate-funded environmental justice projects in Chicago's history." Harrison's phone rang. It was James Patterson. "I saw the news coverage," Patterson said. "Mr. Jordan wanted me to tell you how impressed he is with the environmental cleanup project." "It's the right thing to do," Harrison said. "I should have done it years ago." "That's exactly what Michael hoped you would realize," Patterson replied. "He wanted to ask if you'd be willing to speak at a conference next month about corporate responsibility and community healing." Harrison was surprised. "He wants me to speak publicly about what I've learned. He thinks your story could inspire other business leaders to examine their own practices," Patterson explained. "Your transformation has been remarkable, but it would be even more valuable if it encouraged others to change too." A month later, Harrison stood at a podium in front of 500 business leaders from across the country. Looking out at the audience, he saw faces like his own, wealthy, powerful people who had probably never considered how their decisions affected real families. 2 years ago, Harrison began, I was exactly like most of you. I thought success meant maximizing profits and minimizing costs, regardless of who got hurt along the way. He told them about refusing to shake Michael Jordan's hand, about the discriminatory practices at his company, about David's suicide attempt. I lost over $1 billion in business because of my prejudice and cruelty, Harrison said. But that's not the real cost of what I did. The real cost was almost losing a young man's life. The real cost was poisoning children in neighborhoods I never visited. The real cost was destroying families while I sat in my mansion counting my money. The audience was completely silent. I'm not here to ask for your forgiveness, Harrison continued. I'm here to ask for your courage. The courage to look honestly at how your business practices affect real people. The courage to choose justice over profit. The courage to admit when you've been wrong and to spend the rest of your life making it right. After his speech, several business leaders approached Harrison with questions about implementing ethical practices in their own companies. A few seemed genuinely moved by his story, but the conversation that mattered most came from an unexpected source. A young black businessman about David's age walked up to Harrison after the event. "Mr. Thornfield," he said, "my name is James Washington. I heard about your story from my friend David Jordan. I wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" Harrison was confused. "I've been struggling with depression and feeling like I'll never be accepted in the business world," James explained. "But David told me about your transformation, about how you went from being someone who would reject him to someone who would mentor kids like us." James paused, then continued. "If someone like you can change that much, then maybe there's hope for me to succeed in a world that doesn't always welcome people like me." Harrison felt tears in his eyes. "James, you don't need someone like me to change for you to succeed. You succeed because of who you are. But I'm honored that my story could give you even a little bit of hope." That night, Harrison called David Jordan. "I met a young man today who said your story gave him hope," Harrison told him. "It made me realize something." "What's that?" David asked. "Your uncle didn't just save my soul when he forced me to confront my hatred," Harrison said. "He created a ripple effect of healing that's reaching people I'll never even meet." David was quiet for a moment. "That's what Uncle Mike always believed, that changing one heart could change many hearts." "He was right," Harrison said. "And David, thank you for surviving. Thank you for not giving up. Your life has meaning and purpose that I'm only beginning to understand." "Thank you, Mr. Harrison," David replied, "for showing me that even the most broken people can become whole again." As Harrison hung up the phone, he realized that the journey from hatred to healing wasn't a destination, it was a daily choice. Every morning he had to choose to see people as human beings, deserving of respect. Every day he had to choose service over selfishness. It was the hardest and most rewarding work he had ever done, and he knew he would be doing it for the rest of his life. 5 years after the handshake that changed everything, Harrison stood in the exact same spot at the Palmer House Hotel where his journey had begun. But this time he wasn't refusing to shake anyone's hand. He was being honored. The banner above the stage read Chicago Community Impact Awards, celebrating those who transform lives. Harrison adjusted his simple black suit, no longer the expensive designer clothes he used to wear. His hair had gone completely gray, and lines around his eyes showed the weight of everything he had learned. But his smile was genuine in a way it had never been before. "I can't believe they're giving you an award," Preston said, straightening his father's tie. Preston was now 26, running a successful counseling center that had helped over 200 teenagers struggling with depression and suicidal thoughts. "I can't believe it either," Harrison admitted. 5 years ago, most of these people wanted nothing to do with me." Cassandra approached with her 2-year-old daughter, Emma, in her arms. The little girl had Kane's warm eyes and Cassandra's bright smile. "Grandpa," Emma squealed, reaching for Harrison. Harrison took his granddaughter and kissed her forehead. "Are you ready to see Grandpa give a speech, little one? She won't understand the words," Cassandra said, "but she'll understand that her grandfather is someone who helps people. That's what matters." Victoria joined them, looking proud but thoughtful. "Harrison, are you nervous?" "Terrified," he admitted, "but not because of the speech. I'm scared that people will think this award means I've somehow erased the harm I caused. The families I hurt, the children I made sick. An award doesn't undo any of that." "No, it doesn't," Victoria agreed, "but it recognizes that you've spent 5 years trying to heal that damage. That matters too." The ceremony began with Kane Williams as the master of ceremonies. He had completed his master's degree in social work and now directed youth programs across 3 community centers. Tonight's honoree, Kane announced to the crowd of 500 people, is someone who proves that people can change in the most fundamental ways. 5 years ago, Harrison Thornfield was a man whose business practices harmed thousands of families in Chicago. The audience was quiet, listening intently. Today, Harrison Thornfield has become one of our community's most dedicated advocates for children and families. He has spent over 3,000 hours volunteering at community centers. His foundation has provided scholarships to 150 students from underprivileged families. His company has led the largest environmental cleanup in Chicago's history. Kane paused, looking directly at Harrison. But more than that, he has shown our children that adults can admit when they're wrong and work to make things right. He has given hope to families who had lost faith in justice, and he has proven that redemption is possible, even after the most serious mistake. As Harrison walked to the podium, he saw faces he recognized throughout the audience. Maya Rodriguez, now 13 and healthy, sitting with her mother Teresa. Robert Williams, Kane's father, who had become one of Harrison's closest friends, dozens of children and families he had worked with over the years. But the face that mattered most was in the front row. David Jordan, now 23 and a licensed therapist, was sitting next to his uncle Michael. David gave Harrison an encouraging nod. 5 years ago, Harrison began, his voice steady but emotional. I stood in this very room and made the worst mistake of my life. I refused to shake Michael Jordan's hand because of my own prejudice and hatred. The room was completely silent. I thought I was showing superiority. Instead, I was showing ignorance. I thought I was protecting my family's status. Instead, I was revealing the ugliness in my own heart. Harrison looked out at the audience, seeing faces of every age and background. What I didn't know that night was that my moment of hatred almost cost a young man his life. David Jordan, Michael's nephew, was watching when I rejected his uncle. 3 days later, David tried to take his own life because he felt that if someone as successful as Michael Jordan wasn't good enough for people like me, then he would never be good enough for anyone. Several people in the audience wiped their eyes. David survived, Harrison continued, and over the past 5 years, he has become one of the most dedicated counselors I know. He has saved the lives of dozens of young people who felt hopeless. Harrison gestured toward David, who stood and waved to the crowd. David taught me that our worst moments don't have to define us, but they should change us. My hatred almost killed him, but his survival and his forgiveness gave me the chance to become a better person. Harrison talked about his work at the community centers, about learning the names and stories of families his business had harmed, about the privilege of watching children like Maya grow and thrive. I'm not standing here tonight because I deserve an award, Harrison said. I'm standing here because this community chose to give me a chance at redemption instead of simply destroying me. They taught me that justice isn't just about punishment, it's about healing and transformation. The speech concluded with Harrison's most important message. If my story teaches anything, it's that change is possible at any age, after any mistake, no matter how serious. But change requires more than words or apologies. It requires years of consistent action, of putting other people's needs before your own comfort, of facing the harm you've caused without excuses. Harrison looked directly at the business leaders in the audience. To the powerful people in this room, I ask you to examine your own practices. Are you creating opportunities or taking them away? Are you building communities or dividing them? Are you using your influence to help or to harm? After his speech, Harrison was surrounded by people wanting to congratulate him. But the conversation that meant the most came from an unexpected source. A teenage girl with breathing problems approached him. It was Maya Rodriguez, now in 8th grade and planning to study environmental science in college. "Mr. Harrison," Maya said, "I have something to tell you." "What's that, sweetheart?" "I found out last year that your old company was one of the places that made the air pollution in my neighborhood. My mom told me when I asked why I had asthma." Harrison felt his stomach drop. Even after all these years, facing the children he had harmed was still the hardest part of his journey. "Maya, I am so sorry," he began. "Wait," she interrupted. "I'm not finished. When I found out, I was angry at first. But then I thought about all the times you helped me with homework, all the times you brought me juice when I couldn't breathe, all the times you encouraged me to keep trying." Maya smiled at him with the same trust she had shown when she was 8 years old. "I realized that the person who hurt me and the person who helped me heal are the same person. But you chose to become someone better. That's why I want to study environmental science, to help clean up pollution so other kids don't get sick like I did." Harrison knelt down to Maya's level, just like he had done hundreds of times when she was younger. "Maya, you are going to change the world," he said with absolute conviction. "And I will be proud to say I knew you when you were just starting to discover how amazing you are." Later that evening, the Thornfield family gathered at their home for a quiet celebration. The mansion was the same, but it felt completely different. The walls were covered with photos from community events, children's artwork, and thank you letters from families they had helped. Dad, Preston said as they sat in the living room, "I've been thinking about something. Do you ever regret losing the money, the social status, the old life?" Harrison considered the question seriously. "I regret that it took me so long to understand what really mattered. I regret the people I hurt along the way, but losing the old life? No, I don't regret that at all." "Why not?" Cassandra asked, bouncing Emma on her lap. "Because the old life was built on hurting other people," Harrison said. "This life is built on helping them. Every dollar I lost, every friend who rejected me, every moment of humiliation, it was all worth it to become someone my granddaughter can be proud of." Emma babbled happily in Cassandra's arms, reaching for her grandfather. Harrison took her and pointed to a photo on the wall. Dozens of children from the community center smiling and laughing together. "See all those kids, Emma?" Harrison said softly. "Grandpa gets to help them learn and grow. That's the best job in the whole world." Victoria watched her husband with their granddaughter and felt a deep satisfaction. The man she had married 40 years ago had been successful but empty. The man sitting beside her now was truly rich. Rich in relationships, rich in purpose, rich in the love and respect of people who had every reason to hate him. "Harrison," she said quietly, "I'm proud of who you've become." "I'm proud of who we've all become," Harrison replied, looking around at his transformed family. As the evening ended and everyone prepared to leave, Harrison stepped outside onto his porch. The same Chicago skyline stretched before him, but he saw it differently now. Those lights represented families, children, dreams, struggles, and hopes. Each one mattered. Each one deserved respect and opportunity. His phone buzzed with a text from David Jordan. "Great speech tonight, Mr. Harrison. You're helping a lot of people understand that change is possible. Keep up the good work." Harrison smiled and typed back, "Thank you for surviving, David. Thank you for giving me the chance to learn what it means to be truly human." Standing there in the cool night air, Harrison thought about the handshake that had cost his family $1 billion and nearly cost David his life. But that same handshake, the one he had finally given after learning to see people as equals, had given him something far more valuable than money. It had given him a purpose worth living for, relationships worth cherishing, and the knowledge that even the most broken person could become whole again through service to others. At 67 years old, Harrison Thornfield had finally learned what it meant to be successful. 10 years after the handshake that changed everything, Harrison Thornfield stood in the cemetery where his father was buried. The granite headstone read, Richard Thornfield, 1925-2010, builder of empire. Harrison placed fresh flowers by the grave and sat down on the small bench he had installed there years ago. "Hi, Dad," he said quietly to the headstone. "I know you wouldn't be proud of what I've done with the family business. I know you'd think I threw away everything you and Grandpa built." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves above him. Harrison was now 72, his hair completely white, his face lined with years of hard work and genuine smiles. "But I need you to understand something," Harrison continued. "What you and Grandpa built wasn't really an empire. It was a machine for creating suffering. And I kept that machine running for 30 years before I finally had the courage to shut it down." Harrison pulled out his phone and showed a photo to the headstone. It showed dozens of young people in graduation caps and gowns. "These are kids from the Thornfield Scholarship Program," he said. "Every one of them comes from a family that our business practices hurt over the years. Maya Rodriguez just graduated from Northwestern with a degree in environmental science. David Jordan finished his PhD in psychology and opened his own therapy practice. Kane Williams is running for city council on a platform of environmental justice." Harrison scrolled through more photos on his phone. "Emma, that's Cassandra's daughter. Your great-granddaughter. She's 7 now, and volunteers with me at the community center every Saturday. She doesn't know that Grandpa used to be a bad person. To her, I've always been someone who helps kids with their homework and makes sure nobody goes hungry." The truth was, Emma did know part of the story. When she turned 6, Cassandra had explained it in simple terms. Grandpa used to make mistakes that hurt people, but then he learned how to help people instead. That's why we always try to be kind to everyone. Emma had thought about this seriously and then asked, "Did Grandpa say sorry?" "Yes," Cassandra had said. "But more importantly, he spent years showing he was sorry by helping the people he had hurt." "Good," Emma had declared. "That's what you're supposed to do when you make mistakes." Now sitting by his father's grave, Harrison smiled at the memory. His granddaughter had understood forgiveness and redemption better at age 6 than he had understood it at age 6. The real cost of that handshake, Harrison told his father's headstone, wasn't the $1 billion in business we lost. It wasn't the social status or the political influence. The real cost was David almost dying because I taught him that people like him weren't worthy of basic respect. Harrison stood up and brushed dirt off his simple jeans. He wore work clothes now, even to visit his father's grave, because his hands were always dirty from volunteer work. "But you know what, Dad? That cost taught me something invaluable. It taught me that every business decision affects real people with real lives. It taught me that money without humanity is worthless. And it taught me that it's never too late to choose to be better." As Harrison walked back to his car, his phone rang. It was Kane Williams, calling with exciting news. "Mr. Harrison," Kane said, his voice full of joy. "I won. I'm going to be on the city council." "Yes, that's wonderful," Harrison said, genuinely thrilled. "The city is lucky to have you. I couldn't have done it without everything I learned working with you at the community center," Kane said. "You taught me that real leadership means serving people, not ruling over them." After hanging up, Harrison drove to the Garfield Community Center for his daily volunteer shift. Even though he was 72, he still came every day to help with homework, serve meals, and mentor young people. Maya Rodriguez was there too, now 23 and working as an environmental consultant while pursuing her master's degree. She was teaching a workshop to teenagers about pollution and public health. "Mr. Harrison," she called out when she saw him. "Perfect timing. Can you help me explain how industrial pollution affects community health?" Harrison joined Maya's workshop, helping teenagers understand the science behind environmental justice. It was strange to be teaching kids about the very pollution problems his old company had caused. But Maya insisted that his perspective was valuable. Mr. Harrison used to work for a company that created pollution, Maya explained to the teenagers. But now he helps communities fight pollution. He understands both sides of the problem. One teenager raised her hand. Mr. Harrison, why did you change? What made you decide to help instead of hurt? Harrison looked at the young faces around him. Black, Hispanic, white, Asian, all of them eager to understand how the world worked. I changed because I finally met the people my decisions were affecting, he said simply. When you see pollution as just numbers on a report, it's easy to ignore. But when you see a little girl you can't breathe because of the chemicals you dumped, it becomes impossible to ignore. He gestured toward Maya. Maya was one of those little girls. Her asthma was caused partly by pollution from my company, but instead of hating me, she chose to become an environmental scientist so she could protect other children. She taught me that healing is more powerful than hatred. Maya smiled at him with the same warmth she had shown when she was 8 years old and didn't know he was the man who had made her sick. Mr. Harrison taught me something too, Maya told the teenagers. He taught me that people can change if they really want to. That gives me hope that we can solve environmental problems because the people causing them can learn to become the people solving them. After the workshop, Harrison and Maya walked through the neighborhood together. The air was cleaner now, thanks to the environmental cleanup that Thornfield Industries had funded. Children played in parks that had been contaminated just 10 years earlier. Maya, Harrison said, as they walked, I need to ask you something I've wondered about for years. What's that? Do you really forgive me for making you sick? Or are you just too kind to tell me how much you hate me? Maya stopped walking and looked at him seriously. Mr. Harrison, I was angry when I first found out what your company did to my neighborhood. But then I realized something. What? Hating you wouldn't make my lungs any healthier, she said. But forgiving you and working with you to prevent other kids from getting sick, that creates something positive from something terrible. Maya paused, then continued. Besides, the Mr. Harrison who dumped chemicals in my neighborhood isn't the same person as the Mr. Harrison who paid for my surgery and helped me with homework for 5 years. People aren't fixed things. We're always becoming who we choose to be. That evening, Harrison attended a family dinner at Preston's house. Preston and his wife Sarah had 2 children now, Kane, age 8, and Lily, age 5. Cassandra and Kane Williams were there with Emma and their new baby, David Jr. Victoria, now 70, was helping the children make cookies in the kitchen. She had become the grandmother she never thought she'd be, patient, playful, and completely devoted to her grandchildren. Grandpa Harrison, 8-year-old Kane, called out, Mom said you used to be really rich. Is that true? The adults held their breath. This was always a difficult conversation. I used to have a lot of money, Harrison said carefully, but I wasn't really rich. What's the difference? Little Kane asked, genuinely curious. Harrison knelt down to the boy's level. Having money means you can buy things. Being rich means you have people who love you and a purpose that makes you want to get up every morning. Oh, Kane said, thinking about this. So you're richer now? Much richer, Harrison said with a smile. The richest I've ever been. Later that evening, Harrison sat in his study at home, writing in the journal he had kept for the past 10 years. Every night he wrote about the families he had met, the children he had helped, and the lessons he had learned. Tonight's entry was special. Today marks exactly 10 years since I first shook Michael Jordan's hand at the community center. 10 years since I began to understand what I had really lost and what I might still be able to gain. The handshake I refused cost me more than money or status. It cost David his faith in humanity. It cost Maya her health. It cost countless families their homes and security. It cost me my own soul. But the handshake I finally gave, that cost me my pride, my prejudices and my old way of seeing the world. It cost me relationships with people who valued cruelty over kindness. It cost me the illusion that I was better than other people. In return, it gave me relationships with people like Maya, David and Cain. People who taught me what courage, forgiveness and hope really look like. It gave me grandchildren who see me as someone who helps people instead of someone who hurts them. It gave me a purpose worth living for and work worth doing. Tomorrow Maya starts her new job with the EPA, working to protect communities from the kind of pollution my company used to create. David is opening a second therapy office to help more young people who feel hopeless. Cain will be sworn in as a city council member committed to environmental and social justice. These young people are creating the world I wish I had helped build from the beginning. My greatest achievement isn't the empire I inherited or the money I made. My greatest achievement is knowing that my worst moment led to their best opportunities. The true cost of that handshake was learning to see other people as fully human. The true gift was discovering that I could be fully human too. I am 72 years old, and every day I wake up grateful for the chance to choose again who I want to be. Every day, I choose to be someone worthy of the forgiveness I've been given and the trust I've been shown. Every day, I choose to shake hands. Harrison closed his journal and looked out the window at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there, David Jordan was helping a teenager work through depression. Maya Rodriguez was developing policies to protect children from environmental harm. Cain Williams was planning legislation to create more opportunities for underserved communities. All of them were doing work that mattered because they had survived, learned and chosen to build something better from the wreckage of what Harrison had once destroyed. The handshake that had once cost $1 billion had become an investment that would pay dividends for generations. And Harrison Thornfield, who had spent the first 62 years of his life learning how to be powerful, had spent the last 10 years learning how to be human. It was the best education he had ever received. 15 years after the handshake that changed everything, the Garfield Community Center was celebrating its most successful year ever. The building had been expanded twice, now serving over 1,000 children and families across Chicago's South Side. Harrison Thornfield, now 77, sat in his favorite chair in the corner of the main room, watching children play and learn. His hair was completely white, and he moved more slowly than he used to, but his eyes still sparkled when kids ran up to show him their homework or artwork. "Grandpa Harrison," called out a familiar voice. Maya Rodriguez Williams walked into the center with her 2-year-old son, Michael, named after the man whose handshake had started this whole journey. Maya was now 28 and the youngest director in the history of the Environmental Protection Agency's Region 5 office. She had spent the last 5 years developing new policies to protect communities from industrial pollution, drawing on her personal experience and the lessons Harrison had taught her about seeing the human impact behind every regulation. "How's my favorite little environmentalist?" Harrison asked, scooping up little Michael. "He's already trying to recycle everything," Maya laughed. "Yesterday he put his toy car in the recycling bin because he thought it was broken." Maya had married Cain Williams 3 years earlier in a ceremony that Harrison had helped plan. Their wedding had been held in the community center's main room, with children from the program serving as flower girls and ring bearers. It was the most joyful celebration Harrison had ever attended. "Uncle Harrison," Cain Williams said, walking over with a stack of papers. At 33, Cain was in his second term as a city council member and was already being encouraged to run for mayor. "I have some exciting news about the new environmental justice bill." Cain still called Harrison Uncle, a tradition that had started when Emma was little and couldn't understand why Mr. Harrison wasn't technically family when he acted like the most loving grandfather in the world. The bill passed committee yesterday, Kane continued. Chicago is going to be the first major city in the country to require environmental impact studies for all new industrial projects in low-income neighborhoods. Harrison felt tears in his eyes. This bill would prevent other children from suffering the way Maya had suffered. It would protect families from the kind of pollution his company had once created. Kane, that's incredible, Harrison said. Your parents would be so proud. Kane's father, Robert Williams, had passed away 2 years earlier. Before he died, Robert had spent his final months working alongside Harrison at the community center, helping other families navigate unemployment and housing insecurity. The two men had become unlikely friends, bonded by their shared commitment to helping others and their mutual respect for second chances. Dad always said you taught him something important, Kane told Harrison. He said you proved that it's never too late to choose who you want to be, even after making terrible mistakes. Across the room, Preston Thornfield was leading a group therapy session for teenagers struggling with depression and anxiety. At 36, Preston had become one of Chicago's most respected adolescent therapists, specializing in helping young people who felt hopeless about their futures. His therapy center had helped over 500 teenagers over the past decade, and Preston often credited his father's transformation as the inspiration for his career choice. If my dad could change so completely, Preston would tell his patients, then you can overcome whatever you're facing too. Change is always possible if you're willing to do the work. Today's session included David Jordan, now 33, and Preston's business partner in expanding mental health services for underserved communities. David had become a nationally recognized expert on suicide prevention among young people of color, speaking at conferences around the country about resilience and hope. Mr. Preston, said a 16-year-old girl in the therapy circle, how do you know when someone has really changed? Like, how do you know they're not just pretending? Preston glanced over at his father, who was helping a little boy with his reading homework. You watch their actions over time, Preston said. Real change isn't just words or apologies. Real change is showing up every day, even when nobody's watching, even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it. Like your dad? Asked another teenager. Most of the kids in the program knew Harrison's story, how he had gone from being someone who hurt communities to someone who dedicated his life to healing them. Exactly like my dad, Preston said with pride. He's been volunteering here almost every day for 15 years. He never misses a kid's birthday or graduation. He knows every family story and remembers every child's dreams. That's how you know someone has really changed. Cassandra Thornfield Williams arrived for the afternoon shift, bringing her 3 children with her. Emma was now 12 and practically ran the younger kids' art program. David Jr. was 8 and had inherited his grandfather Kane's athletic ability. The youngest, Victoria, named after her great-grandmother, was 5 and had Harrison's gentle way with children who were struggling. Cassandra had become the community center's education director, overseeing tutoring programs that helped hundreds of children improve their grades and prepare for college. She also ran the Thornfield Scholarship Program, which had now sent 47 young people from the neighborhood to universities across the country. Grandpa, Emma said, running up to Harrison, can you help me with my history project? I'm writing about people who changed from being bad to being good. What's your hypothesis? Harrison asked, using the vocabulary words Emma was learning in her accelerated classes. I think people can change if they really want to, Emma said seriously, but they have to prove it by helping other people for a long time. Harrison smiled. His granddaughter had understood the essence of redemption better than most adults ever would. Victoria Thornfield, now 75, spent her afternoons at the center too, teaching art classes to children and adults. She had become a nationally recognized advocate for environmental justice, using her social connections and communication skills to pressure other wealthy families to examine their own business practices. Her non-profit organization, Second Chances Environmental Justice, had successfully forced 12 major corporations to clean up pollution in low-income communities. Victoria often said that watching Harrison's transformation had taught her that privilege could be used as a tool for justice instead of oppression. "Harrison," Victoria said, approaching her husband as the afternoon programs wound down, "Michael Jordan is here to see you." Harrison looked up in surprise. Michael Jordan, now 61, still visited the community center occasionally, but he usually called ahead. Jordan walked over with his characteristic confident stride, but his expression was more serious than usual. "Michael," Harrison said, standing to shake his hand, the same gesture that had once been refused and later became a symbol of redemption. "What brings you here today?" "I have some news," Jordan said. "David is getting married next month, and he wants you to officiate the ceremony." Harrison felt his knees go weak. David Jordan was getting married to Sarah Chen, a fellow therapist he had met during his graduate studies. They had been together for 3 years and were planning to open a residential treatment center for teenagers with severe depression and suicidal ideation. "He wants me to officiate," Harrison asked, hardly believing it. "He got certified to perform weddings specifically so you could marry him and Sarah," Jordan explained. "He says you're the person who taught him that love and forgiveness are more powerful than hatred and despair." Harrison sat down heavily in his chair, overwhelmed by the honor. David says his decision to live instead of die 15 years ago led to him meeting Sarah, finding his purpose, and building a life worth living. Jordan continued, "He wants you to be the one who blesses the next chapter of that life." 2 weeks later, Harrison stood in the main room of the Garfield Community Center, now decorated with white flowers and filled with 200 guests. David Jordan looked handsome in his dark suit, standing next to Sarah Chen, who was radiant in a simple white dress. "We are gathered here today," Harrison began, his voice steady and full of emotion, "to celebrate the marriage of David and Sarah and to witness the power of love to create hope from despair." Harrison looked at David, remembering the scared 16-year-old who had almost given up on life. "David, 15 years ago you taught me that our worst moments don't have to be our final moments. You showed me that surviving pain can become the foundation for helping others heal. You proved that one person's choice to live can change countless other lives." He turned to Sarah. "Sarah, you chose to love a man whose survival story became his greatest strength. Together, you and David will help other young people discover that their pain can become their purpose." During the vows, David spoke directly to Harrison. "Mr. Harrison, you were there for the worst moment of my life and for many of the best moments since then. You taught me that people can change, that forgiveness is possible, and that service to others is the highest calling. Thank you for showing me what it means to transform into love." After the ceremony, as guests celebrated with dinner and dancing, Harrison found himself in a quiet corner with Michael Jordan. "You know," Jordan said, "when I first decided to go after your family, I was angry. I wanted justice for David, but I also wanted revenge. I deserved your anger," Harrison said. "Maybe," Jordan replied, "but somewhere along the way, this stopped being about revenge and became about redemption. Watching you change, seeing David heal, witnessing your whole family transform, it's shown me something I didn't expect." "What's that?" Jordan smiled. "That the best victories aren't about defeating your enemies. They're about turning your enemies into allies in the fight for something better." As the evening ended, Harrison walked through the community center one more time, turning off lights and making sure everything was secure for the night. On the walls were hundreds of photos from 15 years of programs, children learning to read, teenagers graduating from high school, families celebrating milestones, young adults starting careers. In the center of it all was a simple framed photo from David Jordan's wedding, showing Harrison officiating the ceremony with tears of joy streaming down his face. Underneath the photo was a plaque that read, "In memory of Harrison Thornfield, 1950-27, who proved that it's never too late to choose love over hatred, service over selfishness, and hope over despair." His transformation inspired us all to believe that redemption is possible for everyone. But that plaque wouldn't be installed for another few years. Tonight, Harrison was still very much alive, still serving meals and helping with homework, still choosing every day to be someone worthy of the forgiveness he had been given. As Harrison locked the community center doors and walked to his car, he thought about the handshake that had started this journey. He had lost $1 billion, but he had gained something infinitely more valuable. He had learned what it meant to be truly human. The greatest cost of that refused handshake had been David's pain and his own blindness to the humanity of others. The greatest gift of the handshake he finally gave had been the opportunity to spend the rest of his life healing the damage his hatred had caused. And every day, with every child he helped and every family he served, Harrison Thornfield proved that love really could triumph over hatred, that redemption really was possible, and that the most important handshake of all was the one you offered to someone you had once refused to see as human. At 77 years old, Harrison had finally learned the secret to a life well lived. It wasn't about how much you could accumulate, but about how much love you could give away. And he planned to keep giving it away until his very last breath. That's the incredible true story of how one refused handshake cost a family everything, but taught them what really matters in life. Harrison Thornfield learned that real wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives you touch and the love you give away. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I love hearing from viewers around the world. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel to help us spread more stories of kindness and second chances. And don't forget to click on the video appearing on your screen right now for another amazing story that will restore your faith in humanity.